is a natural byproduct of that philosophy, that hiring practice, to then have to just slough off all these extra names after doing nothing with them, or little to nothing with them in some cases. So it sucks, and it's just kind of, yeah, it's just the nature of how WWE does things. And hopefully, yeah, again, the wrestlers who are released will find a way to recover. Dakota Kai and Raquel Gonzalez interviewed backstage, talking some trash about Mercedes Martinez and the title match that she and Raquel had last week. Everrise show up, and they once again plug their social media show, Everrise Live, with someone in the background holding a sign over the monitor, and then Raquel smacking Matt Martel to end the segment. I'm really enjoying Everrise and their brand of humor here on NXT so far, walking in with the coffee mugs and everything. It is kind of like just bantering. I love their cadence. It works for me. Then up next, Legado del Fantasma take on T-Thatch and Ciampa. I love how Timothy and Tommaso are wearing matching jackets now. That's how you know the bond has truly formed. And if you're wrestling Thatcher and Ciampa, you know there's going to be a lot of snug strikes and whatnot. Mendoza gets his nose busted early in the match here. Very bloody here. It's a very good match, but at a crucial moment, GYV attacked Ciampa and they slam him down on the apron, and that allows Legado del Fantasma to pick up the win. And we find out they're going to be challenging MSK for the tag belts very soon. You know, I get why they did it that way, to further build things with Ciampa and Thatcher and Grizzled Young Veterans, and I get that. It's just disappointing. The fan in me loved that match, and the finish was like, put a bit of a damper on it. Bobby Fish is back cutting a backstage interview. Last week he showed back up after being gone for a long time with an injury. He kind of yelled, chatted at Kyle O'Reilly for a bit after saving him before going on his way. He basically says he wants a piece of Pete Dunne as revenge for that injury, so he's coming for Pete Dunne. And then back at the spa, we see the conclusion of this little skit here where Candice and Indy are about to leave, but Candice's card is declined and it's traced back to a flower purchase, or a florist purchase, 3 weeks ago. And so Indy immediately puts 2 and 2 together and realizes that, what she realizes is not that, Candice and Johnny have been like doing this like to play with my emotions this whole time. It's that Loomis clearly still loves me. And so then she runs off and she's very excited about that. You know, it's again, this segment here, the stuff with Indy Hartwell and Dexter Loomis has been, and really everything the way has touched in the last couple of months, longer than that even, has been some of the most consistently entertaining stuff on NXT. So I'm curious to see where this is going to go. We hear from Johnny Gargano in preparation for the main event. Then we see Aaliyah taking on Sarray. I see Robert Stone dressed as somebody who has been separated from the rest of his street gang from the Warriors movie. Pretty academic match here. Sarray winning handily after pretty much dumping Aaliyah on the top of her head to pick up the win. And then we get a promo, a little pre-tape promo of Shotzi and Ember working on that tank again, getting some sparks going. They call out Raquel Gonzalez and Dakota Kai. They call out Candice and Indy, and they're basically going to take on both teams. They want to, essentially, to try, because it's time to rebuild and reclaim those tag team belts. We see a promo for the Diamond Mine, and then we see Hit Row, which is Isaiah Swerve Scott's new stable. It was officially introduced last week on NXT in a big promo they did, which I watched and I love. I love the whole vibe this group has, and I can't wait to see what they can accomplish in NXT. Ashante the Adonis and Top Dollar, the big guy, they are wrestling Tony Nese and Arya Daivari here, and they just crush their competition. Top Dollar specifically, throw the two of them around like there's nothing. Hitting a suplex out of a fireman's carry is the finisher here, and so Hit Row win, and then they all talk at the end. They all have their lines, and Swerve at the end saying basically he's coming for the winner of the North American title match in the main event. So yeah, good first couple of weeks for Hit Row. I mean, after the big grudge match with Leon Ruff, which kind of established this group, and then the promo they had last week, and then this first match of theirs, yeah, I think they're definitely hitting all the right points in building this new stable and making them look like a serious contender. Backstage, Willie Reeves has got some announcements involving MSK versus LDF for the tag titles in 2 weeks, as well as Shotzi Blackheart, Ember Moon versus Raquel Gonzalez and Dakota Kai next week. Our main event's the cage match for the North American Championship as Johnny Gargano defends against Bronson Reed once again, and with a kind of billing as Reed's last chance to beat Gargano for the gold. Austin Theory is on the outside, helping out where he can. He climbs the outside of the wall to distract Bronson at one point, and then he and Johnny do kind of like a double smash on either end of Reed against the wall. There's an incredible jumping sunset flip that Gargano does to Reed off the wall. The bump that Reed takes is big too. It's just really crazy match this one is. Reed taking a poison Rana as well at one point. I mean, they're really just like doing all the big spots here. Reed with a top rope powerbomb on Gargano, then 2 giant splashes, one to the back and one from the top rope to the normal orientation to win the match. And Reed emphatically wins and becomes the new North American champion, which I'm really stoked for. I think the way they've been building him up the last few months, even though he's been losing some of those matches with Gargano, him chasing it's been done really well. And I think that Reed is one of those guys who's just really been built very well for the last like 6 or 7 months on NXT. And so it's very satisfying to see him get this moment here and get the win. That being said, my grade for NXT this week is a B. I really enjoyed most of the matches they had on the show this week, in particular Zoe Stark and Toni Storm. LDF versus Ciampa and Thatcher I thought was good. I'm disappointed in the finish being dirty, even though I get from a storyline perspective why they did that. And then of course the main event, the build for the main event, the hype for it was great. Again, the comic book stylings of it was fun, and the main event was great as well. And just seeing the new champion being crowned was a fun way to end the show. On we go to AEW, but there's the big news that dropped on Wednesday about how beginning in January of 2022, Dynamite's going to move from TNT to TBS, and that's in favor of the NHL going to TNT. And then you've got a new 1-hour show called Rampage that's going to debut on TNT as Dynamite goes to TBS. And there's going to be 4 super shows quarterly in the year of 2022. And you know what, as far as like how I feel about it, I don't really have an opinion. Either way, I think it's good for them because in the end, some people think of them going to TBS, Dynamite moving to TBS as some kind of demotion. I don't see it that way because TBS is more of the legacy station. It's older than TNT. Also, AEW is still getting more programming out of this. Like they're moving their show to TBS. They're getting 4 shows on TNT that are going to be quarterly super shows, and the weekly hour show on top of Dark Elevation and everything. Like AEW is just getting more and more content out there. So I don't see this as a bad thing for them. And if everyone's happy, and like as long as I get to keep watching Dynamite on the regular, and I don't have to still find a good place to find it, like great, that's all I care about. As long as everyone's having fun. Dynamite begins with Christian Cage versus Matt Sydal, and Taz is on commentary because he has beef with both these guys. That being said, it's a great opening match, very fun technical match here, and I think Christian and Sydal work very well together. Christian wins with the kill switch, then Ricky Starks appearing on stage in a suit and no shirt. By the way, I heard last week the news that he fractured his neck in that match with Hangman Page where he took the German suplex super high. And it turns out that's what did it, and that really sucks to hear. Hopefully Ricky can have a very speedy recovery because he's too good to be wasted on injury like this. So anyway, as he's distracting Cage and Sydal, Hook, Hobbs, and Brian Cage show up and beat them down. Hangman Page runs up to make the save. Cage and Page then trade some counters for their respective finishers, but then Hook ends up hitting with a chop block, and Hangman's left laying as Team Taz stands tall. And so I think this opener did a pretty good build for Double or Nothing in plugging the Casino Battle Royale, in which many of these guys are going to be involved in, and also building the match with Hangman versus Cage. A good promo from the Varsity Blondes. Pillman and Garrison each have their own stories how the Young Bucks helped influence and motivate them years ago, but have kind of disappointed in their new acting out. And they're chasing destiny tonight, going for those tag team championships. Speaking of good promos, a great couple of promos back to back from Jon Moxley, Eddie Kingston, and then from the Acclaimed. But I love the vibe that Moxley and Kingston have. They're kind of like two grumpy old men, basically, talking about kids these days, and it's just really funny. Their banter and their chemistry is so good. Give them the tag titles now and forever, for all I care. They're great. And speaking of great, how about the opening salvos to this match with Jon Moxley and Eddie Kingston versus the Acclaimed? First of all, you got Moxley and Kingston now coming out to Wild Thing. That started last week when Moxley fought Yuji Nagata. I think it's great. I think we need more licensed theme music in our wrestling. And I think sometimes a licensed song can capture an emotion or a feeling far better than any royalty-free or produced in-house track that you try and make sound like the original can ever accomplish. So yeah, I think it fits those guys really well, and yes, more of that I say. And then out come the Acclaimed and Max Caster with a hellacious burn, just napalms the entire countryside with this one, talking about how Moxley's wife Renee is in his mentions and trying to get some oral sessions. And then after a couple of beats, Anthony Bowens yells, "Whoa, we're just talking about the podcast," which is great. And then what's even better, as he gets in the ring, he goes, "AEW," and it takes a huge shot from Moxley, and that's how the match begins. I thought that was great. The Acclaimed In the end, try bringing a chain to the equation, but it's a red herring for the boombox, and that backfires. Moxley ends up hitting them with the boombox and everything. An assisted paradigm shift for Moxley and Kingston to win. I mean, the match itself, I don't remember too much, but it's all the pre-match stuff with the promos and everything that resonates more with me, and so that just kind of like carries over to the match itself, which was good. We see Chris Jericho and Dean Malenko have a chat backstage. That was kind of fun to see. Good to see that Dean's moved on from the whole, mocking your dead father thing that Jericho was doing all those years ago. So Marvez shows up and he wants to know if the Inner Circle will accept the Pinnacle's challenge for Stadium Stampede, and Jericho says he's got to wait like everybody else. And then they have a nice little nod to the Man of 1,004 holds thing they did back in WCW. Speaking of WCW, here comes Tony Schiavone to interview Ethan Page and Scorpio Sky. And Scorpio says that Sting, is not the man he used to be. He warns him to stay away or Scorpio will put him down. Page is reveling in the torture he has brought to Sting and Darby Allin the last few weeks, putting Sting on the shelf with the heel hook, throwing Darby down the stairs, and helping cost Darby the TNT title last week against Miro. He's saying, it was a little bit my fault. He promises to take everything from Darby and be the nail in his coffin. The lights cut out, Sting shows up, and then Darby Allin shows up from behind with a skateboard, and so the two of them beat up Page and Sky. Sting dragging Scorpio around for a very long time in the ring, trying to get the position right before he gets into the Scorpion Deathlock for a bit. So then the baddies try and leave, the Dark Order show up and cut them off, and then they flee somewhere else. And that's where that ends, and we find out that we're going to have a match with Sting and Darby versus Scorpio and Ethan at Double or Nothing. And they're saying, it's not going to be cinematic, they say. It's Sting's first live in-person match in almost 6 years since his match against Seth Rollins. And we all know how that turned out, but it's crazy. I mean, I don't know, where does the Dark Order fit in all this? Are they going to play a factor in that tag match at Double or Nothing? They've been showing up a lot in the last couple of weeks, helping each other out. So, I wonder. And then it just doesn't seem fair that it's like Sting and Darby and also the Dark Order surrounding Ethan Page and Scorpio Sky. I mean, if they weren't such devious heels, you'd almost feel bad for them. The Pinnacle cut a promo at a fancy restaurant. MJF is very upset over Jericho's humor, but he says that you never face somebody who always gets the last laugh. I love that line there. And then Dax Harwood talking about how Jericho's been a mockery of wrestling and how this Stadium Stampede will not be an SNL skit, like he says. Meanwhile, Sean Spears just straight up assaults a waiter for not getting his drink. And then, they wrap it up. MJF saying that this will be, the Stadium Stampede will be the Inner Circle's last match. Good stuff overall, and I'm surprised he got all that done in one take. Dr. Britt Baker's henchwoman Rebel, not Reba, takes on Hikaru Shida in non-title action up next. The crutch is gone. She's hopping around with both legs. The legs seem to be fine for Rebel here, but it's pretty academic. At one point, even Shida tries to mock Britt Baker by pulling out the one glove to get the lockjaw attempted. Ultimately, she makes Rebel tap out of the stretch muffler. Pretty short fashion. Then right after the bell rings, though, Britt jumps. Shida beats her up in the ring, does the stomp to her on the Women's Championship and holds it up. I think this is the first time in a long time where I felt that Shida's reign is really in jeopardy here. Britt Baker, I think, has been subtly, slowly built up as a real threat, and I think that this is probably the most, like I said, the most jeopardized Shida's reign has been, and I just cannot wait to see this match on pay-per-view. So last week you had Orange Cassidy pack match to see who would face Kenny Omega. It did end in a way that led to the triple threat match, but it was not the original path that was intended. Apparently, in the powerbomb that Orange took, he did get legitimately injured, and so they had to call an audible, and so Kenny Omega gets involved, basically. So now here's how they try and go back and try and work around that in the story here. We see this segment from last week after the match. Kenny Omega and Don Callis go to Orange and approach him with a contract saying, this is your way of getting out of the title match, Double or Nothing. You get a title match with me some point in the future, but you're hurt, so we want to look out for your safety. And Orange very slowly tears it in two, and I love seeing Don Callis' face in particular as it's happening, to see all the different levels he's going. And then he goes to tear it a second time. No, we get the point. Just tear it at once. And then my favorite part about this is that Omega's like, I'm now warning you, you could die in this ring if I hit the one-winged angel on you after what happened to your neck and everything. And then Don Callis, because they knew it was going to happen, it was going to be torn in half, they give him another copy of the contract, which I'd love to just had one on hand. They're like, no, we got to give you some time to think about it. Don't tear it up just yet. So that's the big question mark as whether or not he will, be in the match. They're going to find out next week on Dynamite. I don't know the severity of Orange's injury, but I'd be very surprised if Orange took up the offer. The Inner Circle, Sans Santana, make their way to the ring to address the Pinnacle's Challenger Stadium Stampede. Ortiz and Guevara and Hager all take turns on the mic, basically saying how they rule and how the Pinnacle drool. Jericho takes the mic and then goes on a big rant about the trauma he suffered at Blood and Guts. As he's talking about this, the fans begin to boo him. And I'm like, are they booing him or are they booing the Pinnacle for throwing him off the roof? Because I'm like, I can also see some of the crowd in the audience at Daily's Place calling bullshit on Jericho for the trauma from the spot because it didn't look that great, all told. So Jericho says they 1000% accept the Challenger Stadium Stampede. They're going to dance all over the Pinnacle's faces and piss all over their graves. I thought this was an okay promo. I think that like Jericho is trying to recapture some of the magic from the first babyface promo they cut a few weeks ago before Blood and Guts, where he goes, if I just keep speaking and run on sentences and just amp up my intensity, the fans will eventually get on my side no matter what I say. Jade Cargill backstage reiterating she's her own boss, and she's approached by Mark Sterling Esquire, who says he's not like those other managers because instead of Jade working for them, he'd work for Jade. He wants to be part of Team Jade. So Jade kind of brushes him off because he's interrupting her mic time, but says she will think about it. On we go to the NWA Women's title match as Serena Deeb defends against Red Velvet. Serena looks so good in this match, making Velvet look like $1,000,000 here. A lot of really great, exciting near falls in this match as well. This is a pretty well executed match. Serena gets her Serenity lock locked in twice, and on the second time she's really extra aggressive, slamming the leg into the mat before she pulls back and Velvet eventually taps out. So yeah, this was a really good match and really raised my personal stock for Red Velvet in a big way here. We get another video from last week. This time it's from Pac about how he's going to be in a title match now, and he asks, what fool bets against the bastard? On we go now to see Austin Gunn taking on Anthony Ogogo in his second ever match, and we see Cody Rhodes is in Austin's corner, draped in the American flag. And I didn't get to review last week's promo that Cody did and all that stuff. Like, look, I like the idea of Cody and Ogogo feuding. I think it's a great first opponent for Ogogo if they're going to build him up. But like, for them to go immediately to foreign heel, I hate America, rah rah, America, fuck yeah. Like, it just seems like, I just talked about this, the whole worst tropes thing. Like, something I should have added on that along with the Foreign Menace is like the counterbalance of that when it's like, USA! It's like, it just so, in 2021, I think it's silly. And the promo Cody cut was not great either. Pretty short match, Ogogo with two big body shots to Austin Gunn, and he starts spitting up blood on the second one, like spits right in Ogogo's face, to the point where the announcers don't know whose blood that is for a minute. And then finally a big like elevated body shot, and the referee calls the match. Ogogo wins, and then like Ogogo takes Cody's American flag and just throws it up in the air and has Cody catch it awkwardly. And so that's how the whole thing ends. And yeah, like again, I don't mind the match. I don't mind them doing that, but like again, the whole framing of like, yeah, well, you're here making money in America, so fuck you, buddy. Like, it's just, I don't know, I hate this. We hear from SCU after last week's emotional tag title loss to the Young Bucks. Of course, SCU now forced to break up because they lost, and boy, did AEW just botch the production on that post-match moment with the hug, or what. Anyway, Daniels shakes Kaz's hand and whispers something to him, and he walks off, and Kaz then cutting a promo solo saying he's going to seek revenge on every member of the Elite for basically allowing or forcing this to happen. And then he says that's the gospel of Frankie Kazarian. Nice little tribute to Daniels there at the end of that promo. Now we hear from the new TNT champion Miro, who last week won the belt in a very good match against Darby Allin here. Darby looked great in defeating that match, honestly. So Miro's the new champion, and in the ring he thanks Jesus Christ for giving him the strength to beat other people up. He talks about how he beat up Darby Allin, how he's going to do an open challenge next Friday on Dynamite for the belt, and then suddenly Lance Archer and Jake Roberts interrupts, and Lance makes a Rusev Day joke at his expense and says their match at the pay-per-view is going to be like Godzilla versus Kong, but he's going to make Miro his Bulgarian bitch. I love Miro's reaction. I have never heard that before, I assure you. And then he says, you know, tells Jake not to get in his way because all the yoga in the world can't save him. And a great closing line from Miro says, you know, you're right, Lance, everybody dies, but I insist you go first. Like, oh God, what a supervillain line that was. You know, I rarely talk about Miro's promo skills, but like, son of a bitch, he just like killed it in this one. And like, I mean, that on the back of this promo alone, now more than ever, I want to see Miro versus Lance Archer. Main event for the AEW Tag Team titles as the Young Bucks, featuring Nick Jackson and his weird headpiece that he comes to the ring with, take on Griff Garrison and Brian Pillman Jr., the Varsity Blondes. Some good heel Young